Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Glenn Kelly, and I'm a patient. I have no disclosures. Let's talk about what's possible. What's possible in medicine? What's possible when patients are able to connect to other patients? Speaking of what's possible, this graphic image, I created it in 5 minutes using AI. Who knew that was possible? So my journey, it began 40 years ago this summer. I grew up in central Illinois, about 270 kilometers south of Chicago, 160 miles. And you see a view, literally that's my backyard. That was my backyard. And I was approaching my senior year of high school, my final year of high school, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. That meant 8 months of chemotherapy and a month of radiation for my senior year. And how does one get through that? Well, it's through their friends, their family. In fact, my classmates elected me homecoming king. I'm not the homecoming king type, let me tell you. And so from there, I went to college. Started average, kind of average college student. And then that spring semester, we had a reoccurrence. It had come back. And I needed an autologous bone marrow transplant. At the time, they were still very experimental. I went to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. There, you see the picture, that's the day before my transplant began. I got out, went back to college, even graduated in 4 years. And then I went and lived. And I lived and, learned to have some fun along the way. I developed an affinity for hiking and climbing, and there you see my crew. We spent 2 weeks on the backside of Denali hiking and, really learned the idea that climbers are only supported by other climbers, and that's it. So the essence of support. My fun continued. 2003, I had just summited Half Dome in Yosemite, and I was training for a marathon. And I'd gotten home from that, short trip, and I wasn't feeling well. I was feeling kind of funny, and one thing led to another. Thankfully, my girlfriend at the time was a nurse because I was having a heart attack. Yes, 98% blockage in my right. You can see the details above. Put in some stents, and then I went on and lived some more. And if you start to see a theme, I like to have fun. So I started to enjoy cycling. That was a lap around Lake Tahoe, complete with feather boa and Elvis sunglasses. And of course, we have to dress up while we're skiing. And yes, that's a Wookiee costume with a waitress outfit. Again, just continued to live life to its fullest. I had learned that early on in my adolescence. However, from there, my coronary artery disease progressed. And eventually, I would need that bypass. At that time, we started to begin to see signs of a constrictive pericarditis, or constricted pericardium. However, got through that fine. Thought, well, I'll go sail the Southern Caribbean. So I did, and that's a picture there in Grenada. However, reality really hit in 2 years later. Came home early from a ski trip to be greeted with this. Dr. Liao, I think, is in the audience today, and so it was a 12-hour procedure. You can see the list of accomplishments he completed with me, and it was a heck of a recovery afterwards. Even discovered at that point, because of the radiation damage to my lungs, even today I have a restrictive pulmonary disease. However, then I was introduced to Dr. Cogswell, who was here in the audience. She said, well, we're gonna have to think about a transplant. And honestly, I thought, transplant, okay. Well, in 5 minutes, I was on board. What do we have to do to solve the problem? And so that began the progress. Now, I should take a moment and talk about my why. Yes, I like to have fun. I like to have fun with purpose. And I like to have no more fun than with my own 2 boys. At that time, in that particular year, my older son, John, was graduating in high school and entering his freshman year of college. And my younger son, Mark, was still in high school and a proud member of his marching band. In fact, that fall, all 185 kids dedicated their state championship performance to me. And they went out and won. If I can't do this for myself or my kids, I had 185 kids behind me supporting me. So now back to business. July 1st, 2015, I was admitted. Now this was the old allocation system in the US. So that meant we took a swan catheter, stuck it in, welcome to the ICU. I was gonna redefine what ICU living was like. So I brought in lots of things. For starters, I brought in my own espresso machine and I was pulling shots for the fellows and the staff. I had to-go cups, and I tell you, I wanted to make sure they knew me. It was kind of dumb. Second of all, I thought, okay, it's craft time for the holidays. Amazing what you can find in a hospital to make a Christmas wreath. Now, this is the early days of Amazon Prime, for those that are familiar, and I discovered I could get a disco ball to hang off my IV pole. Because I was going to live in there. I had a whiteboard. You know, every patient's room has a whiteboard. I wanted my own whiteboard. Brought in a TV, PlayStation, etc. Dr. Cogswell had a different point of view, and you can see there was some serious stuff going on. So, time was running out. What were we going to do? We were approaching June, and I was soon to be ineligible because of my worsening condition. This was the prior allocation system, so she asked, would you be interested in going to Baylor in Dallas? And so I did. I said goodbye to my favorite nurse, hopped the med jet, where, by the way, they do serve Diet Coke and pretzels. And I brightened up the room with a palm tree. Now, crafts there were a little different. They always ask, this is true of any hospital, is there anything we can do for you? Is there anything we can get for you? And I started to wonder, is there a menu? Because it would certainly make life easier. But instead, I said, how about dancing girls? I'd really like dancing girls. Well, literally within a day of that, the staff, the nursing staff and we made cutouts of dancing girls. So, alas, remember I was listed back in December 1st. Finally, August 7th, my day had come. Dr. Chemagaris may be here, I think. I haven't seen him yet in this conference. He was at Baylor at the time. Very complicated procedure. He led the team. 12 hours. You can see the complications above. And following, 4 weeks later, that's how I still looked. Remember, I had a resternotomy, as you read. Notice all the drips in that picture. Yes, there's a vent. That was 4 weeks post-transplant. Dr. Hall, who's here, Dr. Shelley Hall, this was her point of view. Yes, I'd gone into renal failure. Yes, I had a fungal infection. Yes, many, many complications. And they were very candid to me afterwards, like, we didn't think we were going to be able to keep you. I had a disco ball. Things were going to be different. So, by mid-August, or mid-October, I was ready to leave. I literally wanted to bust out, even if I was crawling. And let me tell you, I was literally crawling. So I decided to throw a party. 2 parties, in fact, one for the day shift and one for the night shift. And in one patient tip, Hawaiian shirts are wonderful attire for anyone under cardiac care. It opens from the front and you have a pocket for your telemetry box. I literally had a dozen of them. So I went forward in life. Remember, I had that whiteboard. I developed a bucket list. I was ready to live that bucket list. And don't forget, I was on dialysis at this point because my renal failure turned out to be permanent. So first, I wanted to become a professional ski instructor. So I did. And you might think that's Michaela Schifrin or Lindsey Vaughn in the picture. No, that's my cardiologist, Dr. Cogswell. I challenged her to a ski race. I wasn't even close. I wanted to go to Morocco. I went there for 15 days. I wanted to see the Sahara Desert as part of that because I had my own question in my mind. Would I feel drier in the Sahara Desert or on diuretics while under advanced heart failure? Diuretics every day of the week. I had to race back, though, from the Sahara because I had dialysis. And then all of a sudden, remember that fungal infection? We thought we'd had it solved. All my markers were, had kind of bottomed out. We were good, and it came raging back. 3 months in the hospital, plus post-IV antifungals. Serious business. So we got through that. And that allowed me to take my son to Japan. And we made 3 stops, did a little skiing, and brought my new pet dialysis machine. Yes, I learned to do my own hemodialysis. I was on my own dialysis nurse, complete with 16 gauge needles right here. That's the reality. But the reality is also I got to continue with my bucket list. I'd always wanted to ski the highest peak in New Zealand, so I heli-skied Mount Cook in New Zealand, and that evening I was back on my dialysis machine. So fortunately, 3.5 years after my heart transplant, my younger son became my indirect donor. And from that, I went in, I was able to have a transplant. And there I am, I think that was 2 days post-transplant, my kidney. Notice the gold lame jacket. Because after my heart transplant, I thought, kidney, it's like going to Wisconsin for the weekend. Now, on a support note, that's my friend Ben. I was there for him his first day of dialysis. That's where we met. He didn't know what was going on in the world. And we sat. We became really close friends, which we still continue today. As fate would have it, 2 days after my heart transplant, he showed up because his deceased donor call came. And he was able to have a kidney transplant as well. So how did I get here? It's the people. It's people like you in this room. It's people like fellow patients, which you see here. This is a group of patients that we call Second Chance for Life there at the University of Minnesota. We're a peer-to-peer support group. We're patients helping patients. And the way I was able to get through mine was not all toys. People were part of that equation too. And those are some of the people there that helped me, and as well that I get to help going forward. Because I realized I could have gone back to my career in technology, and I chose not to. I was transplanted when I was 49 years old. I have a lot of life to live. What do I want to do? I want to help other patients. And so I do that with purpose, and I offer support. First, visiting in a hospital, that's even in the ICU right there. We have training and everything that we do to prepare to visit one another in a patient community. Support goes hand in hand with education. And so we provide education, both in person and online. And it also led to a higher calling of, I started to think about how many more patients can I help? Not to mention, there was some real benefit where we linked our small organization there in Minnesota to the worldwide organization, the Mended Hearts. The Mended Hearts is in 33 countries, over 117,000 members, and the world's largest peer-to-peer heart patient support organization. In fact, we just opened our first office here in Europe, in fact in Geneva, last year. So then if you can help a patient in front of you, and that's my goal, my currency is how many patients can I help? Well, how can I help thousands of patients? That's advocacy. And so I got more and more involved in advocacy, first through Mended Hearts. Next, I became a member of the OPTN Heart Transplant Committee. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the OPTN is the Policy and Oversight Organization for Heart Transplant in the United States. So I've been on that 2 years. And then someone suggested, why don't you get involved in the board of directors? I said, okay. So I ran and I was elected. So this beginning of July, I'll be on the newly elected OPTN board of directors. But it doesn't stop there. Why am I here? I'm also the first ever patient advocate for the ISHLT Foundation. And we are having our first official meeting of the patient task force later this week, so that we can strengthen that patient experience while providing greater value for our member experience as a whole. So what do you see as possible? Think about the opportunities that are in front of you in your various locations and centers in hospitals? What do you see with patients and other patients? Much is possible. My case is extreme, but what if it's a little bit of that? Because I can tell you this, every patient wants to help. They're just not sure how. Perhaps we can find a conduit for them. Last but not least, do you remember the picture with me saying goodbye to my favorite nurse? Well, last fall, we were talking and she wanted to go to Japan and another friend of hers was going to go to Japan. Well, I've been to Japan several times. And I said, heck, I'll go. You want a guide? So I was their guide. Support can go both ways. On that note, I want to thank you all today and appreciate the time.